Everybody. We're going to kick off Memorial Day weekend with a little news. It would seem that Oregon, the state of Oregon, is intent on banning hunting, fishing, and pretty much any type of farming or ranching. So I got a little podcast this morning. I'm live on TikTok, I'm all over Facebook, and it'll be on YouTube in a few minutes. But will Oregon make hunting illegal? And I'm going to apologize to you in advance if you pop up in the comments with a question. I will come back and look, but when I'm reading and I've got some going on, I may or may not see your comment. So I apologize in advance. If you want to throw something in the comments, I'll take a look at it. And thank you so much for being there. Throw some stars and some likes in there. These platforms gauge everything on stars and likes. So throw them in there so that maybe we can keep doing this when we need to. So will Oregon make hunting illegal? Have you ever been to Oregon? I have. It's beautiful. Mountains, forests, rivers, wild country doesn't even look real. When the sun starts coming up through the fog, it's amazing. And honestly, it's almost a paradise. But there's an old saying, once you start calling someplace paradise, you can kiss it goodbye. And folks, that's exactly what some people are worried about right now. Oregon has a petition called IP28. Now, IP28 is a petition to outlaw, it would criminalize livestock production, hunting, fishing, and many traditional agricultural processes. It's called IP28 in Oregon. Now, what that is a ballot initiative. They didn't go to their representative and say, "Hey, I want you to write this bill and put it on the table so we can discuss it in open legislature." They bypassed all that. They got a petition. They got enough signatures on it, and they're claiming that they have enough signatures now to put it on the ballot and put it before voters this November. Now let that sink in for a minute. That's not a rumor. That's not a Facebook meme. That's not some rage bait thing trying to get you to respond to this or that. It's a real ballot initiative. And according to opponents, this proposal would criminalize livestock production, meat production, hunting, fishing, and many traditional agricultural activities. Now, folks, they're not mincing words here. They're not trying to do some backdoor thing and say, well, our thing says protect the greyhounds, but we're really trying to ban hunting. They're just outright saying we want to ban hunting and livestock production. And they're saying they have enough signatures to put it on the ballot. This is in the state of Oregon. Now, I know somebody's going to jump in the comments and say that'll never happen here. Well, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember the things that have happened here in the last 10 years that we swore would never happen. Never in a million years. And those of you in North Carolina and some of these other places, when I talk about the big medical scare of a few years ago, we didn't have it as bad as some of the other people did. I saw some people that came from New York and places that they couldn't believe that we were still open for business, considering the way their state was turned down. But anyway, let's get back to Oregon. A lot of people laughed 10 years ago and said that there's no way that would happen here, but it did. Now, this is the same pattern we've been warning about, piece by piece, step by step, word by word. Not always direct. Sometimes it's hidden inside animal welfare language. Sometimes it's wrapped inside emotional marketing campaigns. And sometimes it's buried deep inside giant legislation like the Farm Bill, the Federal Farm Bill. Technically, it would be the Federal Farm Act. I had a lawyer correct me on that the other day. But people understand bill, so I'm going to say bill. We've had concerns over wording in bills like House Bill 657 in North Carolina. Virginia had some serious issues. Arizona, Mississippi, Texas. Basically every state has had some issues, and that's not a coincidence that this stuff keeps popping up all across the country. It's a well-organized effort. Trust me on that. But in Oregon, they have a movement now where critics say activists are openly trying to eliminate animal agriculture and hunting completely. They don't want to regulate it. They don't want to reform it. They want to eliminate it. Now grab yourself a cup of coffee. I'm going to drink out of my Starbucks cup, which is from the West Coast. But grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit down, let's talk about this for a minute. All the way out there in Oregon, this could concern every hunter, farmer, fisherman, and rural family in America, because whether you live in Oregon or not, you live in North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, New York. New York right now, they banned youth hunting. Yeah, we're going to do a story on that soon. But no matter where you live, or if you live back in the swamps and pine woods of eastern North Carolina like me, what starts in one state has a funny way of spreading. And folks, this one's serious. The organizers behind Oregon's initiative petition, IP28, say they have enough signatures to potentially place this thing on the ballot. That's not rumors. That's not a Facebook meme. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's a real ballot initiative. And according to opponents, this proposal could criminalize livestock production, meat production, hunting, fishing, and many traditional agricultural practices. They did it. It's not law yet, but it's going to go before the voters unless something changes. Now, what I want to say here is something very important. People have a right to disagree about hunting. They have a right to be vegetarian. People have a right to be vegan. They have a right to advocate for causes they believe in. That's called America. But hunters and rural Americans also have the right to notice patterns. And the patterns that we see, first they targeted game birds. That's illegal now, everywhere. Then they target trapping, then hounds, then certain breeds, then rodeos, then fishing, then farming, and then meat production itself. Think about that, meat production. It's always presented as just one small change until one day people wake up and realize the culture they grew up with is suddenly being treated like criminal behavior. Think about that. Think about the things that you do. Think about the things that you've done in the past. Think about what we call Saturday in North Carolina is a felony in New York State. A lot of the activities that I do on a Saturday might get me life in prison up in New York, especially some of the hunting devices that I carry. Definitely illegal there. But these people in cities sometimes don't understand the rural economies. A hunting season is not just about hunting. It's about gas stations. It's about feed stores. Now, feed stores, it's about them around because you don't turn the dogs off. They don't have an off switch. It's about tracking systems, farm equipment, small diners, hotels, taxidermists, processors, and local jobs. By the way, processors. There's a state right now that has a bill proposed to make it illegal to process your own meat. You have to take it to a processor. Think about that for a minute now. In many small towns, hunting seasons pump life into local economies. It's the same thing with livestock. If they ban livestock, are they going to ban selling meat in the grocery store? When you go to the grocery store, you're going to be able to buy carrot juice, carrot steaks, and that's it? Or is there going to be some chicken and some beef up there for you? I mean, if they ban the production in the entire state, are they going to ban the sale of it as well? This is crazy. This is really crazy. A lot of times, a family farm is just that. It's not some evil corporation. A lot of times, it's somebody's grandfather. Somebody's been trying to hold on to land. It's been in the family for generations. And then activists say, stop producing meat. Stop hunting. What they're really saying is destroy the entire economic and cultural system. And I'm flipping back and forth between my two cameras here. let's ask the obvious question. If Oregon banned or heavily restricted livestock production, where would the food come from? Where would it come from? Other states? Other countries? Seriously, other countries? Longer supply chains? Higher prices? More dependency? After all, we watched what happened during supply chain disruptions of the last few years. We're still recovering from them, and businesses are still going out of business. You'd think people would understand how dangerous that could become. Food security matters. Do they want people to starve to death? Probably. Self-sufficiency matters. Now here's the part I think many hunters need to understand. This is not just about deer hunting. It's not about dogs. It's not about guns. It's way bigger than that. This is a culture war over whether rural lifestyles are considered legitimate anymore. And I think that's what many people are so frustrated about, because a lot of rural Americans feel talked down to constantly, like our traditions are backwards, like our skills don't matter, and like they're obstacles to progress. And we probably are an obstacle to progress, because a lot of us don't fall in line and say yes sir real quick. But here's the truth. The same people that are mocked for hunting are often the same people fixing stuff, working farms, feeding you, repairing power lines, making sure your electricity works, fixing your cable when it goes out, raising livestock, running heavy machinery, or keeping the communities functioning during disasters. Talk about that operating heavy machinery for a moment. I remember before my dad died, we were in a room where a conversation was taking place, and people were complaining about the road construction that was ongoing. They were turning a 2-lane road into a 4-lane road. And there was some congestion, where the road construction is going on. Of course there was congestion. But there was somebody in the room that complained about it and said, I wish they would just get all these tractors out of the way and stop and get rid of this stuff. Dad looked at him and said, I wish they would just prevent you from driving down a road, period, because they got to build the road for you to drive on it. A lot to think about there. But somebody says, well, this could never happen nationally. Well, there's 50 states. If one state passes it, that's 49 to go, right? Remember how quickly culture changes. 20 years ago, most Americans would have laughed at the idea of outlawing meat production. Now major corporations are investing billions into synthetic meat alternatives, and some of it's made out of bugs. And now there's an open campaign against animal agriculture. Oregon's a test state. Trust me. And again, you don't have to believe every claim. You don't have to panic. You don't even have to pay attention if you don't want to. But it's going to eventually show up at your doorstep. It's going to be like, how'd this happen? Because political movements grow slowly at first and then suddenly. One thing I've learned covering hunting issues over the past 15 years is that hunters are often our worst enemy when it comes to unity and when it comes to some things that we do. Rabbit hunters argue with deer hunters argue with rabbit hunters. Actually, deer hunters, I think, argue with everybody. They argue with coon hunters. Still hunters argue with dog hunters. Public land hunters, private land hunters, they got to argue with each other. Somebody go buy 3 acres next to a 20,000 acre hunting area and then complain about the hunting. Meanwhile, activist organizations coordinate nationally. They work together. They share messages. They share strategies. And they play the long game. And we defeat them this year, they come right back next year. Hunters better start understanding that, because if a group gets eliminated, the next group moves to the front of the line. They outlaw dogs, they're coming for you. Just saying, you better pay attention. You don't have to personally enjoy every style of hunting to recognize the attacks on hunting culture as a whole, but a person can dislike hunting and still recognize that broad anti-hunting language can affect everybody. That's why paying attention to wording matters, definitions matter, language matters, because lawyers and activists understand something hunters often sometimes forget. Words become policy, policy becomes law, and that eventually becomes enforcement. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in Oregon. The signatures still have to be verified, and voters would still have to approve it. And honestly, I think when the majority of ordinary Americans fully understand the economic consequence of something this extreme, there would be serious pushback. But the fact this proposal even exists and has got enough signatures to be put on the ballot should wake everyone up. Because movements like this do not disappear overnight. They grow slowly over years, and they absolutely influence politics in other states. So what should hunters and rural Americans do? First, you need to pay attention. Second, you need to stop assuming it couldn't happen here, or this is my right to do this. Third, the actual wording of legislation, instead of only reacting to it after passing laws. You need to pay attention to what the legislation says, not just the title, and don't just get upset after it passes. And fourth, we need to work together more than we fight against each other. A house divided cannot stand. A divided community cannot stand, and they're easy to defeat. At the end of the day, this conversation is not really about Oregon. It's about all of us. It's about whether future generations will still grow up fishing in farm ponds, running rabbit dogs, deer hunting, coon hunting, hog hunting, coyote hunting, your favorite type of hunting. It's about raising cattle. It's about raising poultry. It's about working family farms. And it's about learning the traditions that many of us grew up with. If they outlawed the stuff they're talking about in Oregon and North Carolina, it would bankrupt the majority of my family tomorrow. Because farms feed us. And they feed you too. Do you realize where your food comes from? They don't make it in the back room at the grocery store. If you eat, you need to think of farmer. Because somebody produced that food for you to eat. And Oregon wants to outlaw that. Now, the real debate is happening underneath all this, and that's something you need to pay attention to. And about us, if you enjoyed this podcast, consider giving it a like, sharing it. On Facebook, it went pretty much everywhere, I think. But one day, the old trucks are going to stop running and they're going to rust away. Our boats are going to wear out. And the old hounds will run their last trail. But the stories, the traditions, and the freedom we pass down, those are what matters. This is Todd. I'll see you on the next one. All right, I'm off Facebook. I'm still on TikTok for now. I'm going to look and see what happened here. Facebook just popped up a red message. I'm pretty sure I'm in Facebook jail again. So, what do you guys think? You think it's crazy that Oregon wants to outlaw hunting? I do. All right. I'll see you on the next one.